But I wanted you to look at this article here. Rogue communication devices found in the Chinese solar power inverters that cover the United States, which fits right into what I was talking about, with the people feeling like they're being spied on all the time. It's because they are. Everything is spying on them.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing. Is I was reading into those articles there, and I was thinking, what if they had a force shutdown mechanism on them where it rendered the entire panel just null and void, where it actually destroyed like a self-destruct button. Imagine the damage it could do to a nation that had set itself out on solar panel. Imagine if every solar panel in Europe had a Trojan horse in it, where you press a button and it's suddenly inoperable, rendered inoperable there. I mean, that's massive percentage of generation of power in many countries, Spain included, Portugal. And what's so interesting is, England, a well-known destination for sun on the beach and a well-known sunny island, England, is now going to start blocking the sun anyway in this cold, wet environment. And, their solar panel production should decrease as well. So, I look at it this giant stage play. They want to sell us solar panels. Okay, I get it. But then you want to block the sun, so the efficiency of the panels in a dark, wet island is going to be diminished further. And that's where you get to do your geoengineering experiment. Like, there's about 1,000 other places on the planet you could probably do it first that might have an impact. It's already cloudy. It's already raining there all the time. But then when you come into the self-destruct mechanisms, imagine if, what was that movie with Bruce Willis where they had all those robots that were super powerful, and then they, were laying in these beds, and then he got out and he had a chance to press the button, and like all of them fell down on the street, and just the operating system ceased on all of them at the same time across the entire planet. I forget the name of that movie, but imagine if that's the solar panels. Somebody within a realm somewhere in China has the ability to press a single button, and every single solar panel on the planet stops that's made in China, because of that Trojan horse that's inside it. Like, that would set us back incredibly as well. That would take nations to their knees, especially like Germany or whatever. They're up on they blew up the last, stacks for their coal burning power plant it was a couple months ago. And they're all cheering, yay, we don't have any more reliable power. Yay, look how advanced we are. Yay, we don't have reliable power. That is an insane asylum, lunatic, fringe thought, where you are excited because you no longer have reliable power for your civilization or for society or your country, and you celebrate the vulnerability of that system to not have reliable power, that they're excited about it. And then now this whole next, I guess, chapter of, are they going to bite their nails waiting to see if there's going to be more failures? Now, maybe that news article was put out on purpose to try to explain away the plasma penetration event that occurred in Spain with the incredible amplified UV that just really hit those panels and sent them into maximum uptake. Perhaps that's just put there like, oh, maybe that was the Chinese that did something in Spain, and maybe that was part of it. Maybe it wasn't all overload on the grid and the synchronization, because people are starting to pick up on it, that it was actually a natural event. It was a tear in the magnetic field. Like, more and more people talk about this. So is that put out there as a propaganda scare that, ooh, there could be a vulnerability in solar panels to explain away the next time that there's a rip in the magnetic field, and that magnetic field line from the North Pole tries to punch back in somewhere and takes down another power grid? Could they blame it on the Chinese then for their secret Trojan horse in the panels, man? It wasn't a depleting magnetic field. Nope. Keep going to work. Keep paying your taxes. Just asking for a friend, man. Just asking for a friend.
Even worse than that, it could be even more sinister. Like,
ooh,
right behind,
go on, Sinister. Tell me.
Right behind me is this article about blackouts and 162% inflation in Venezuela. They have these little areas, like Cuba and Venezuela and different places that are like petri dishes, where they could see what happens when the power goes out and people turn, to their little local communist government there, and there is no help. but the people in charge have power. And then you come across articles like this: much of the U.S. at
Of
heightened
course,
risk for summer
always.
power outages. Regulators warn. So, it doesn't matter. And that's funny. The thing in Spain, it could have been even more sinister than that. They could have just turned it off. It could have been simply that the entire renewable energies field doesn't work as good as petroleum or nuclear backed power. I mean, if you think about it, it just really isn't. And then the idea, really, when you're trying to tell a world that is burning up, but at the same time you keep having problems with your solar panels. If you have hail or snow, or it's not that bright outside like it's been in New Mexico for the past week, we've had diminished sunlight reaching the ground because of dust and wind. And then you go a little south to us in Texas, and they're already in the triple digits in late May, which is perfectly normal for the South and the desert and the Southwest to have triple digit temperatures late May and June. That's the hottest time of the year in the Southwest. But they pretend like it's never happened, and then bet you money either a hurricane, thunderstorms, or just they'll claim there wasn't enough power, and then they'll shut down the entire thing. And then of course they start screaming climate change, even though it's the same climate, it hasn't changed. But it keeps happening. I mean, they do it for the cold, they do it for the hot, they do it for tornado season and hurricane season. And they just seem to want to get you used to, as an American citizen, being used to being without power, without a steady supply of things. And it's funny that we have a new administration that seems to be on the surface reversing these things, yet the media outlets keep fear mongering, or maybe it's not fear mongering, that you may be dealing without power. But it's not that far fetched. We just looked last year, we had that hurricane. Those people were basically unhomed and didn't have electricity. But you got, the worldwide internet to help out. You got the Starlinks in there, which is another point. It's weird how the entire world is being blanketed with internet, but at the same time can't keep the lights on.
Yeah, there's an inverse there too. The more the world's blanketed with internet and signal frequency, the stranger the world becomes. Now, is that a natural interference pattern with our electromagnetic brains? Is it the changing magnetic field that this wire powered grid is trying to supplement something and re energize, at least on the surface layer of the planet? Because if you think about it, and these controllers that have been around for thousands of years understand the cycle. So, what if there was technology that was available to remagnetize or create an artificial magnetic field band aid, for a better term, from where you sit at like 1 meter off the ground all the way up to about, I don't know, 300 feet or so on the average above your topography where it is? Doesn't matter if you're in the mountains or you're in a valley, that 300 foot of vertical space above where your feet are on the ground. I mean, almost everywhere in the world now has either satellite coverage, which is beamed down signal, which would then, amplify that up to, several miles above your head, where that, 300-foot range off of cell phone towers and these things, 5G towers and transmission towers, all the way up to now multiple miles above the head. So there's different layerings of different frequencies within the lower atmosphere, literally down to ground level. Or is it to interfere with the human domain, literally in our physiology? Or is it to create an artificial frequency area where something can step out that's not normally able to exist within the bounds of this dimension that we sit in right here, and there's air in front of us? There's not enough electrical frequency in the air to hold state for an electrical frequency being couldn't just be here because, well, the mechanisms for it to exist aren't there, and unless you're in a very highly amplified 5G frequency cross grid somewhere, and that cross grid could create in that localized space a frequency field enough, strong enough, holding state long enough, perpetually, basically, for something else literally to step into that space. Okay, but then if you as a human walk through that same exact location, well, you're going to be in for some kind of, crazy morning or afternoon or whatever time of day it is. So now it seems to have evolved into overlapping these 5G frequencies from multiple locations. It's not just 2 or 4, it could be 50 beaming into a single location to create a frequency field in a very localized area. And again, that's just the ground base. Now we have it coming from the sky. So what's the possibilities of us creating an artificial environment for something else to step into that's not normally here? Now, and again, I would say it can only be done right now with the depleting magnetic field on the planet. If the magnetic field was incredibly strong, I would say this would be impossible even with their technologies, and they could hold state for just a very short period of time. But as it was explained-ish, the lower the magnetic field goes, the easier it is to amplify a local frequency area. There's an inverse with that. The higher magnetic field naturally goes in a really tight magnetosphere. It's more difficult to hold state on that because you're creating a different magnetic field and a different polarity in that regional space, literally feet, square feet, tens of square feet, whatever it is, a square block. But in a very, very low magnetic field, to be able to do that and oscillate that over and create that, well, loop right there is much easier in a low magnetic field. So look for the strangeness in the woo-woo to occur more when we are in very low solar activity periods. I remember when that tear through for the Spain power outage, there was almost no solar activity. Like at the baseline where it's 0 and you measure up 1, 2, 3, KP1, KP2, whatever it is, G1. That was almost every measurement possible off the sun was at a 0 state at that point that rip through came through and ripped down through the ionosphere down onto the ground level. That would make perfect sense because without the compression on the magnetosphere, it would just kind of get really wavy and kind of not compressed, and it would actually expand off the planet, and then you would get that tear. And if there was a magnetic field line trying to reestablish itself, that was usually in that looping field. If there was a rip in that, well, it's going to be tangling and dangling out there going, where do I go now? Oh, I'm going to go back to the ground. I feel there's some minerals or something down there. Whoosh. And it just tries to reestablish itself wherever it can. Low magnetic field off the sun, like 0 look for whatever. There's a huge coronal hole coming. That's not a problem. There's going to be magnetic. But as looking on the backside of the sun, I saw some guys that were, looking at stereo ahead there, and there's almost no sunspots coming around the backside. There's one big one and like 2 or 3 little small ones. But as those transit around the side, we are going to be at another very similar type of solar activity minimum coming up in about 2 weeks when the same exact conditions were rife for that Spanish power outage with a rip in the magnetic field. The reason I tell you that is because at those low periods is when the highest push of 5G in a localized area can enhance those frequencies for the greatest field state change. And that's the direct opposite. You're looking for that inverse correlation. Very, very low solar activity, very weak magnetosphere or magnetic field allows us on Earth with our technology to ride on top of that and take advantage of that depleted field state to create our own in substitution in lieu of it in a regional area wherever they want to create it. So the inverse, when it's really tight magnetic field, when we got a lot of CMEs coming in and there's like solar wind, it's like things are pounding, it's the inverse. They're not able to hold that state or create such a very large effect because it's competing with something that's there already. So if there's no magnetic, if it's very little like interaction energetically going on between the star and our planet, you can substitute that in and create another field within that. So look for the woo-woo to occur when we get to almost no solar activity. You're going to watch them just flip the switch on a lot of these things. They're going to be, and I'm just wondering, is it the people are they really going insane because of a low magnetic field, or is it all these triangulated and interfering amplified energies on purpose through cities and through partially out into, neighborhoods and not really countryside, but that transition zone between it. Like the amount of car accidents during these times just goes through the roof. Craig was talking about that because I was talking to Craig Simpson over at Rating Creators, and he was talking about when we get into low activity, he was also pinging on the same thing, like the amount of auto accidents during these low periods of what we consider depleted magnetosphere or weakened shell casing around our planet. It's the best way to describe it, that the amount of auto accidents increases exponentially. And insurance companies have some sort of algorithm that they follow solar winds and they follow space weather to know how many accidents they will have terrestrially in advance of about 3 days. So there's something with that. Now, was it ever like that where we had this and we could definitely correlate auto accidents with solar winds and solar activity? I don't think so. This is a brand new thing in a different depleting magnetic field. But whatever's happening, the woo is starting absolutely for sure and amplifying. Every time we're going to come into a zero state on whatever the sun's doing up there, when it goes to baseline 0 on the KP and the wind velocity, and even the protons or the electron or the cosmic ray, whatever, when it goes to the baseline 0, we are going to get some freak show happening on the planet again and again and again. So welcome to 2025 through 2035.